अस्सलाम वालेकुम। वेलकम टू द कम्युनिटी आवर विद सजाद बर्की। हम ये प्रोग्राम आपके लिए ह्यूस्टन के आज स्टूडियो से पेश करते हैं, हर हफ्ते एक नए टॉपिक के साथ, नए गेस्ट के साथ, और उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि आज भी आप हमारा प्रोग्राम जो है उसको एंजॉय करेंगे। पिछले हफ्ते हमने कुछ बातचीत की पाकिस्तानी पॉलिटिक्स के मुतालिक, तो सोचा क्यों ना आज फिर वापस हम अमेरिकन पॉलिटिक्स की तरफ आएँ। ह्यूस्टन में हमारे यहाँ पे आजकल इलेक्शन जो है लोकल, वो काफ़ी सरगर्म है। हमारी एक हॉटली कंटेस्टेड सीट है कंग्रेशनल डिस्ट्रिक्ट 22, जिसमें के रन ऑफ जो है वो इस महीने होने वाला है। तो दो कैंडिडेट्स हैं जो इस रन ऑफ में एक दूसरे के साथ मुकाबला कर रहे हैं। तो हमने चाहा क्यों ना आप दोनों को इनके साथ मिलाएं, क्योंकि दोनों कैंडिडेट्स का एक तरह से हमारी कम्युनिटीज़ के साथ ताल्लुक़ भी है। ऐसे जब हम बातचीत करेंगे तो हम वो बातें भी आगे उसको पुश करेंगे कि क्या क्या ताल्लुक़ है हमारा, और क्या ये कैंडिडेट्स जो हमारे कम्युनिटी के इश्यूज़ हैं इनको लेके आगे बढ़ेंगे, और अगर ये वो इश्यूज़ को आगे लेके बढ़ेंगे तो किस तरह उनको अकम्प्लिश कर सकते हैं। तो मैं आपका तारुफ पहले इन दोनों कैंडिडेट से करा दूं, और फिर हम कुछ सवालात करेंगे और इनसे इनके जो इश्यूज़ हैं उनके मुतालिक बातचीत करेंगे। सबसे पहले मेरे साथ हैं डॉक्टर लतीशा प्लमर। हाय लतीशा,
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having us.
थैंक यू। लेट मी डू अ लिटिल, मैं थोड़ा सा इंट्रोडक्शन, योर इंट्रोडक्शन फॉर आवर कम्युनिटी। डॉक्टर प्लमर grew up in Houston. She's been living here all her life, I imagine. Practicing dentistry. You are a dental surgeon. And the thing that caught my attention was, and I'll come to it later, but I do want to read out to my audience. She says, if the heart of the American dream is the ability to control your own destiny, then we need legislation that empowers people to innovate and forge new paths. Rather than hamper would-be entrepreneurs with unmanageable healthcare costs, we need to fix the Affordable Care Act for all Americans. Coming from a medical practitioner, I think that's important. And we will talk more about it, because healthcare is one of the issues that our community faces, at all times. We also have with us Mr. Siri Kulkarni. What is happening with me today? Siri Kulkarni, how are you today, sir?
Hi, Assalamu alaikum. मेरा नाम श्री कुलकर्णी है। मैं यूएस कांग्रेस के लिए खड़ा हुआ हूँ, और पाकिस्तानी अमेरिकी समाज की मदद, हिंदुस्तानी अमेरिकी समाज की मदद, और सब अमेरिकी समाज की मदद मैं यहाँ तक पहुँचा हूँ।
Very good. I see there is a whole lot better than the last time we did the show.
A little practice.
A little practice has helped. Of course, Siri Kulkarni, and आप समझ ही गए होंगे, one of the reasons why he's able to speak, one of the reasons is because he is from Indian descent, and that's why I guess he's been exposed to the Urdu and the Hindi language. Siri was commissioned in the Foreign Service as a Foreign Service officer by Secretary of State Colin Powell, and served the country for 14 years. Speaks Hindi, Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, Hebrew, Russian. I guess that's great. Also worked with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand with the Armed Services Committee, and then he finally completed his mid-career master's degree in public administration from Harvard Kennedy School, and now he wants to be a congressperson. Welcome to the show, Siri.
Thank you for having me.
But how about we do this? Rather than I ask you a question, why don't I let you guys make a statement about your campaign, and we begin with that.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we can take on other issues. I'll start with you, and I also want to point out to our audience, Dr. Letitia Plummer. Her name doesn't reflect it, but she's a Muslim.
Yes, I am.
Yes, and I want to put that out so that our audience knows. She's from the Muslim faith and lives in Houston. So please go ahead, and I'll let you go start first, and make a comment about your campaign.
Sure, yeah. No, thank you, first of all, for having us today. This is really a great honor.
Thank you.
I am Dr. Letitia Plummer. I have been practicing dentistry now for about 18 years, but I started my career in the public sector. So I managed and practiced in 6 dental healthcare centers in the Harris County area. So healthcare obviously is something that my father is a dentist as well, and so healthcare is something that I've been around all my life. One of the major reasons why I'm running for Congress or wanting to run for Congress is the healthcare piece.
The healthcare is...
Yes, most definitely. This community is incredibly diverse, and I think that's another reason why, you know, as a daughter of an immigrant, my mother is half Yemen, half Persian, and my father's African American, and so that's where I get my Muslim heritage and my background, and so being able to have all those experiences as well really makes me understand what's going on in our legislations right now with the president and all the things that he's doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Looks like you're ready to jump into the healthcare fight.
Let's do it.
Siri, I'd let you do your introduction.
Sure. So I grew up here in Houston, and I went to high school here, and I went to college at the University of Texas at Austin, during which time my father actually got sick with cancer, and so I had to come home and take care of my father for a year in MD Anderson Hospital until he passed away 20 years ago, this week actually. I actually had a very difficult childhood because we grew up in a rough neighborhood with a lot of crime and a lot of violence, but after my father passed away, I decided that I wanted to go into public service. So I spent my entire career in public service. I served in the Foreign Service for 15 years overseas. I served in Iraq, Israel, Russia, Taiwan, and Jamaica. I also did countering Russian propaganda work for the State Department, and I spent time in the U.S. Senate working on defense, foreign policy, and veterans affairs for Senator Gillibrand. I did my master's in public administration at Harvard, which actually occurred at the exact same time of the 2016 election, which was one of the most controversial in our history. And since that time, I saw certain changes in our government that got us to the point where I didn't think that I could continue to defend this administration abroad. And what I'm talking about is the promotion of Islamophobia, like praise for white supremacists in Charlottesville, like campaigning for a person who said that our families when we were stronger when we had slavery, or that Muslims should not be able to hold office. These things went beyond politics to me, beyond left and right. They just went to issues of right and wrong. And so I decided to resign from the Foreign Service, come back home to run for office, because I thought it's the moral and ethical thing to do.
Very good, very good. I think that's very commendable for somebody who had in a way a set career that you could have worked with for the rest of your life. You decided to walk away from it and come to public service. And I know it's very difficult. Most people don't realize how difficult foreign service, public service is. It's one of those occupations where it's thankless in a way.
Well, you don't get paid a lot of money for it. You don't get rich in public service if you're doing it the right way.
I think the community, though. I think when you're a voice for the community and you're actually making change that affects every single person, I think that's payment. There's something that that's when you intentionally want that to happen. Then I think that's.
I mean, there has to be some satisfaction in doing this. Otherwise, people wouldn't stay in Congress for 40 and 50 years. I hope.
I'll tell you, people have asked me before, in all honesty, they've asked me, what is the angle? Who's paying you? And I said, I'm doing this because I think it's the most patriotic thing I can do. I'm doing it because I think our country is in a crisis right now. We need people to speak out.
And we want to talk about that a whole lot more. But before we go there, I want you to, both of you, to kind of talk about your district, about where you are. Why did you decide that this was, because it's no secret, it's a very Republican area. It's the current seat is held by a Republican, an incumbent who's been there for a while. So why did you guys decide to run for this?
Sure. So I've been actually in my district now. I'm a practicing dentist, as you had mentioned previously. So I've been in the district now for almost 18 years. So I've raised my family there. We grew up there. I've owned 3 homes there. So it's kind of where I landed after I got
see.
out of dental school.
Yeah.
And so the reason why the district is winnable, in my opinion, is because of the diversity of it.
Okay.
And the diversity, it kind of checks all the boxes. So African Americans, Asians, Hispanics, whites, it's all kind of divided. And so these congressmen have kind of held these seats, long term, only because no one's really given them. And no one's really run against them that can really win.
Yeah.
And so because of my cultural background, because I'm a woman, typically, women are incredibly high voting with all of the issues going on with our Congress right now in terms of women being disrespected and not being paid equally. Those issues play into how this seat is definitely winnable.
Okay.
And the engagement of the communities. I mean, every single community now
course, yeah.
Can be engaged, and
Yeah.
they can know that someone now is sitting in that seat that can check the boxes, so to speak.
Okay.
And they can really speak to the issues and have lived the issues. I think that's the big thing to make sure we drive home is being able to not only have experience on a national level, but also have someone that's been there on the ground with them in the community since conception.
All right, yeah, that's one way to look at it. Siri, how do you look at this district? And I'm asking you, because I'm the host today, but this is a question that I have been asked by many of our community members as to why is somebody even bothered to run? It's so Republican. Why are Democrats running in this seat? Do you see a climate change?
Well, so I'll say this. When people talk about what's a safe district, a safe Republican or a safe Democratic district, they assume that the situation is static, that it doesn't change. And if you look at the last 4 or 5 cycles, people have done the same things every time, and you see roughly the same numbers between Republicans and Democrats. I think, however, if you do look at the district differently, and you try to pull in new voters, people who aren't participating in the political process, then you can actually upset that status quo. And the truth is that this district isn't a safe anything district. It's a safe non-voting district right now. And so when you pull in people, for example, who speak a different language, people who have a different cultural background or religious background, who haven't been reached by the incumbent, for example, then
Or have been ignored by the
exactly have been ignored. So we did something very different with our race. We actually looked at all of the different groups, in particular the Latino American community and the Asian American community, and we said, maybe if somebody was reaching out to people in their language, going out to their religious centers, we could actually draw out new voters. And so we took a large database of voters and we broke them down into Gujarati and Marathi and Telugu and Malayali Christian, Malayali Hindu, Sunni Muslim, Shia Muslim, Ismaili Muslim, Bori. And so we had people who were actually reaching out, making phone calls, knocking on doors, in the language of the person that they were contacting, who go to the same Gurudwara or Masjid or Jamaat Khana, or sometimes people who are a relative, an uncle or an auntie or a cousin of the person that's being called.
That always
And
helps.
the results were that we got out 12 times more people from the Asian American community than had come out the last time in the midterms.
Okay, well, hopefully. And Letitia, I see that you're also working hard in our so-called our community, the Indian, Pakistani, Arab, Muslim community, and you're wanting to reach out to them. Do you have difficulty reaching out to them? Do they recognize you as a Muslim when you go out to them, or have you been to masajid before where people will recognize you and say, "Oh, here's one of our sisters who's running
Oh yeah,
for..."
I was raised a Muslim all my life, and so an entrepreneur as well. So working incredibly hard, in my business, and so in terms of going to the masjids, yes, of course. Now, do they recognize me? I'm not quite sure. I don't typically walk up to someone and say, "Hello, I'm Letitia, I'm Muslim." That's typically not the conversation. But I think that our community has definitely. I grew up in the community. My family is very active in the community as well. And so, it's going to take everyone. I mean, this race is not...
The reason I ask you this question, I'll tell you why, is because I am also, I've been trying very hard for the last 20 years to motivate our community to get involved in the American politics, to go and vote.
Right.
And we've seen that lethargic attitude of where they don't care. And I want people like you to wake up our community, to make them somehow feel like, hey, look, this is important. You have to go out and vote.
Yeah, you know what I found, and you're exactly right. And one thing I found is just like we, as excited and committed we are in our faith, we are that excited and committed about being Americans.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of us in this community, in this particular community, have brought their children here. They've done very well in school.
Yes.
So they look at America as bringing success to them and allowing them to move forward.
Yeah.
And so, in a lot of ways, they're content.
Yeah.
And they're satisfied kind of with how things have happened in their lives. But I'm telling you, women in our community have really, really been excited because they don't typically see any leadership piece, right?
Of course, yeah.
And so to see a Muslim woman of African American descent walk in front of them and say, listen, we can change this, it's really excited a lot of people.
Okay.
And I truly believe now is our time. And I don't know if it's because of what Trump is doing. I think it's just people are ready for change. Our young millennials are growing up and they're active now. And they've
I promise you, our
They're
community is very aware of what Trump is doing.
Yes, oh, of course they are. And to give them a voice and to
Yeah.
have someone allow them to have a voice to speak for them and
Yeah.
to actually work in their best interest is something I don't think they've ever had before.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's the whole purpose. That's why we do these shows.
Yes.
That's why we are trying to reach out to our community, because we feel like it's so important. Siri, I'm going to come back to you with the same question. I have to take a break. They're asking me to take a break, and you're watching. आप देख रहे हैं हमारा प्रोग्राम दी कम्युनिटी आवर आज ह्यूस्टन स्टूडियो से। देखते रहिए। हमारे गेस्ट हैं डॉक्टर लतीशा प्लमर, मिस्टर सिरी कुलकर्णी, एंड विल बी बैक आफ्टर दिस ब्रेक। वेलकम बैक टू द कम्युनिटी आवर। I'm your host सजाद बर्की और हम ये शो आपके लिए ह्यूस्टन के आज स्टूडियो से पेश कर रहे हैं। हमारे गेस्ट आज के दो कैंडिडेट जो कि रन कर रहे हैं ह्यूस्टन की कंग्रेशनल डिस्ट्रिक्ट 22 जो कि शुगरलैंड, केडी, क्लियर लेक, गिरलैंड, ये सब एरियाज में जो लोग रहते हैं वो इसको वोट दे सकते हैं। ये रन ऑफ का इलेक्शन है। बोथ ऑफ देम आर डेमोक्रेट्स who are wanting to be the Democratic candidate for the elections in November, running against an incumbent। तो उनसे हम आज बातचीत कर रहे हैं अपने कम्युनिटी के हवाले से कि किस तरह ये हमारे कम्युनिटी के इश्यूज को लेके आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। Coming back to you, Siri, same kind of question I want to pose to you is related to our community. How do you think you are connected to the Pakistani Indian community, to the Muslim Arab community who are watching our show, and how do you think you are best able to represent them?
Sure. I mean, so from the time that I was a child growing up, you know, one of my father's best friends was from Pakistan, and so I grew up thinking that there was really no difference between the Muslim and the Hindu community. And I've lived and worked in Muslim majority countries before. In fact, I actually sponsored an Iraqi to come to America on a green card from Iraq. And I always told people that actually the United States is a wonderful country for Muslims to immigrate to and settle to, because we're a very pluralistic society. We treat everyone equally. But I'll tell you, when I was working in the Senate, and the first time the idea of a Muslim ban came out, when they were talking about revoking the visa waiver program, we were fighting very hard to make sure that people's rights were not going to be discriminated against. And we heard a presidential candidate say that Muslims, all Muslims, 1.6 billion people should be banned from the United States, and I thought that would be the end of that campaign. Sadly, it wasn't, and we've continued to see an increase in Islamophobia to the point where I decided that I could not serve and fulfill my career anymore if I had a government that was saying these kind of things. The fundamental principle we were based on, even before we were a country, even before 1776, people came here for religious freedom. That's a founding principle. Thomas Jefferson had a Quran in his office. And so when I did that, for me, it was taking an action, but it was taking a moral stand as well.
Yeah.
And so when I go out to all the masajids around here, or I talk to groups of Ismailis, especially young Muslims, they appreciate taking that moral stand and actually standing up, because people are going to have to speak out. There's some people who just say, well, keep your head down, wait until this passes. But I think in times like this, that's also a moral choice to be silent. And if we actually take that decision to speak out together with moral conviction, then we can push back against this wave of fear and anger and hostility.
That's the desire, I think, that we feel among our communities largely, and also not only just our communities. We see that among many communities over here. I know in the African American community, it's very prevalent. The Latino community, they're feeling the pain that has been caused by this current presidency and the new proposals that they keep coming up with. Being a Democrat, I'm sure you're going to be, obviously you have the same kind of issues that when I'm talking about democratic issues, I'm talking about being against the Muslim ban, being against, the immigration, stop people from coming into this country, let's build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. If elected, Letitia, how far do you think you can take this, these proposals, or how strongly can you defend the immigrant and the Latino communities over here?
I'm going to tell you a story. My mother is actually a breast cancer survivor, and my aunt Feroza was going to come to take care of her, because that's how we do as families. And she could not come because of the ban. So I personally know how it's affected my family. Specifically. And so when you have something that happens to you in your life, you fight with every single thing you have. My aunts would not be here. I learned Islam through my mother, my aunts, you know what I'm saying? Because they've been here all my life. And so when you have been touched in that manner, the idea of not being able to have your families here with the elimination of chain migration or family reunification.
And especially when we all,
we're immigrants.
Grew up, we're immigrants.
Yeah, we are a country,
this
a
country
melting
was
pot.
Made on those principles.
Exactly. And so the unification, the hatred that is being spewed right now by our current administration, it just hurts me to my core. And I'm not only I'm a minority because of my religion, but I'm a minority because I'm a woman. I'm a minority because I'm African American. You know what I'm saying? And so there is so much passion inside of me that wants me to fight. To make sure that my voices are heard and that I speak for my communities in a very universal way.
Very good. Siri, I couldn't help but notice, I pulled this from your site, you obviously talked about, the threats to rule of law and the degradation of women and all that. But this particular sentence that says the greatest danger to our country right now is not a foreign power, but the internal divisions in our society. And I want you to talk about this a little more.
Sure. So, what we're seeing right now is not something that's never happened before. These things come in waves and cycles. And so throughout our history, there have been times when people have scapegoated others. At times in the past, it might have been the Irish, for example. It might have been Jews or Chinese people. Right now, there are certain groups that are being scapegoated for all of our problems. Muslims are one, but as you mentioned, also Latinos as well are being scapegoated. And so in a sense, there's an opportunity here for intersectionality, for all of us to stand together and say, no matter what background you come from, whether you're Latino or whether you're Muslim or you're African American, we're all able to stand together on our moral principles. That's why we actually did an event at the Highway 3 Mosque called a taco truck at every mosque, because there's actually a large and growing Latino Muslim community here in the Houston area. And so it grows out of that same sort of activist movement, the no ban, no wall movement, where we bring people together and we say, we're going to stand up, not in anger, but we're going to stand up with love and with positivity and push back against those forces by setting a higher example. So when we brought the taco truck to the mosque, people really appreciated that sort of intersectionality, because the truth is that we're all in this together. And so, like you said, we're all immigrants here. My mother right there, she Her family immigrated here in the 1600s. My father immigrated here in
Some came
1969.
earlier, some came later.
We are all immigrants in this country, and you can try to take those words out of our documents, but you can't change the fundamental nature of this country. And
That's
so
right.
we
And
need to stand up for that.
It amazes me going back to our president, and it's, of course, I say this with shame, because I feel a great amount of respect for the presidency, for the what it stands
seat.
for, the seat and the whole concept of somebody being the president of the United States of America. It's like the most powerful person in this world. His wife is an immigrant.
All of his wives.
I find it, maybe humorous in a way, but at the same time sad that he still feels that kind of hatred for immigrants and for other faiths that that's bothering I think a large portion of this country right now.
I mean, the truth is that I hear all the time, Islam is incompatible with America, and I hear this from people who have never stepped foot in a masjid, never read the Quran, don't know anything about Islam, and I say, come with me, actually listen one time to a khutbah.
Yeah, you'll only know if you maybe read a couple of pages about Islam and find out
what we represent. Exactly. It's a very peaceful religion. Everything we stand for is peaceful. And so I think education is something that's important to you, even as a young person growing up.
That was something, and the next thing I wanted to talk about, both of you, because I know the number one list on item on our priority list in our community is the education of their children. That's why majority of them actually came here.
That's right.
They left their homeland because they wanted to give a better education to their children.
Right.
And we are seeing difficulties in our education system right now. There's too many challenges that we are facing. You want to address how we can make it better?
Yes, definitely. So currently in our district, and the numbers are kind of staggering, almost 50% graduate from high school. I mean, the district is so diverse. There's so many rural areas in it that even though you may think that some areas do very well, other areas do so poorly. And so there's a lack of equity in the district in general. Right now, our property taxes pretty much pay for lower school education in middle school and high school. I've owned homes there. I've worked working at my practices in the district, and so those contributions, when you own a home and you live there and you contribute, most of us move into those areas because the school systems are so good. And so that means something when you have actually contributed to our property taxes. So, but leaning on property taxes to fund our schools fully is not going to work. Because if a home isn't worth as much value, it's unfair for those schools not to have the same equal education for those children. They're still children, they're still our future. So one thing I want to do is I want to force and put pressure on the states to put more funds into our public school system. I want to make sure property taxes are not the only reasons why our schools do well. Use them saying. And then I want the federal government, I think the federal government is responsible for making sure that whatever is missing in the budget, we make sure our schools are able to be aligned.
To function. The ones who don't have the high value,
high property values still have what they need. But I think that it's really important for people that are running for office, that are wanting to represent our communities. I feel like it's important that you've contributed to the community financially as well. Because on my back, I've put the kids through school. You know what I'm saying?
And so, you have 4 kids?
I have three boys.
3 boys
Yes,
who've
3 boys.
gone through school.
And the college education is another piece of it.
Oh, that's
a whole nother conversation, but that needs to be debt-free.
Siri, I want you to address the education part also. I'm sure you understood growing up how important education was.
No, absolutely. In fact, it's coincidental. Today is National Teacher Appreciation Day. So this morning I was addressing a group of elementary school students and getting them pumped up to both appreciate their teachers and get ready for their test next week. But that's actually an issue in of itself, is the high stakes testing that students go through. But I think one of the bigger problems that we have right now is that there's a threat to the entire public education system. There are people in this country, including the Secretary of Education, who want to pull money out of the public education system.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, people move into specific areas because they want their children to have a good education.
Yeah.
I saw growing up, I lived in one neighborhood where the resources weren't as great. It was more dangerous, and I got bused across town to a much nicer neighborhood in River Oaks from my high school, and the neighborhood I grew up in and the other neighborhood had very different levels of resources and different educational opportunities for the kids. And I want to make sure that there's equity across these areas, but also that people who have contributed actually they get the education that they plan for, you know. And
That's right. And also, that if I'm not wrong, hasn't there been some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? A ceiling on how much taxes, property taxes,
right.
will be paid in the
Part of the new tax bill. There's a cap on
There's a
property
cap,
taxes.
you know,
and
Exactly.
that will make a difference.
Yeah,
you know.
it is, but the thing is that now in our district, especially in Fort Bend, the problem though is that schools are closing now. They're combining schools together, which means now schools are larger. The funds are not there. They're over budget. They're in debt. Where is that money going to come from?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? The states have to contribute. Right now, the state's only contributing about 35 to 40%. That's a contribution. That's not supporting the school system.
Because that's what comes to my mind is that, you know, you would think that the properties that have higher value, people can afford to pay taxes, and we're giving them a break rather than giving a break to, you know, lower income people. Yeah. Okay, Siri, how about you? We talking about education. How do you see this?
Well, so I think there's several threats to education right now. One of the biggest being that there's forces that are trying to take money out of the public education system, including our Secretary of Education, who believes that voucher systems can take money out of the public education system and put it into private education, which may not be up to a higher standard. And at the same time, the public schools that money has been withdrawn from, they suffer, the students who are left there. And so people who move into areas specifically because of those good public schools, they need to be reassured that the public school system is not going to be weakened. In addition to that, some of the programs such as Head Start or CHIP that take care of children who are in need. I mean, this is something that applies to any community, any religion, the idea of zakat.
Yes.
That program is being threatened right now. The president just said that they're going to remove funding from the CHIP program, which seems to me to be the most unethical,
I think the most
immoral
unethical
to
thing
do.
you can
Yeah,
think
that's
of.
healthcare.
You know, it's, I mean, you're literally taking the bread out of the hands of little children.
Yes, sick children.
Yes.
Sick children who deserve that help the most.
Of course they do. Yes, of course they do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we, you know, with us, you know, as a community, there's now a growth of public schools, not public, I mean private schools that are run by different groups. Some are run by masajids, some are run by other institutions that have taken over who wanted to educate their children in a certain way with their beliefs, with their faith, and give them a, you know, and those seem to be threatened because of these new laws that are coming in. There may not be enough money for them to use to send those kids to school anymore. And I will, you know, you guys have touched on it already, but that's something that our community feels like, you know, they need to look at. And there actually needs to be more money poured into schools like this, you know. But they're asking me again to take a break.
Okay.
let me take a short break and we'll be back after this. आप देख रहे हैं हमारा प्रोग्राम द कम्युनिटी आवर विद सजाद बर्की। ह्यूस्टन के आज स्टूडियो से हम ये आपके लिए प्रोग्राम ला रहे हैं। उम्मीद करते हैं कि आप हमारा ये प्रोग्राम एंजॉय कर रहे हैं। डिस्ट्रिक्ट 22 में जो इलेक्शन हो रहा है रन ऑफ का, उसमें ये दोनों कैंडिडेट हैं and I'm hoping you'll all go out and vote. देखते रहिए, we'll be back after this break. जी वेलकम बैक टू द कम्युनिटी आवर। हम आज बात कर रहे हैं जनाब श्री कुलकर्णी साहब से एंड डॉक्टर लतीशा प्लमर हु आर रनिंग फॉर डिस्ट्रिक्ट 22 रन ऑफ जो कि शुरू हो रहा है इन अ फ्यू डेज 14th to the 18th of May and then elections on
May 22nd.
May 22nd। तो हम उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि आप सब लोग जाएंगे, वोट देंगे और कोशिश करें कि डेमोक्रेट साइड पे वोट दें ताकि आई कांट पिक और चूज लेकिन वन ऑफ दीज गाइस गेट्स इलेक्टेड इन नवंबर। हमने we've touched on different issues with both of you. One of the, of course, another issue that's close to us is the healthcare issue, and I know you are directly associated with the healthcare issue, the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
How do you see that? Where is it going? The community is they're kind of anxious.
Yes, no,
They don't know whether next year they will be
Have
able to be
right.
insured or not.
So for the last probably 10 years, I've been really in that public sector, so working with people and patients that don't have any resources. And Harris County is special in that way. A lot of areas don't have the access. Our community health centers are closing all over the country right now. And so from that part of it, losing community health centers is a very, very big concern. But then also the potential loss of the Affordable Care Act. It's a whole other conversation. We have about 40,000 people on that in our district right now. And that's scary. Because if people don't have access or have access or health care is accessible to them or affordable to them, then what are they going to do? And so I'm a firm supporter of improving the Affordable Care Act. I do believe that we should move toward universal health care. I think that's the only way we should do it. But I think it should be done in steps because I've been in this industry for a very long time. And I do believe that improving the Affordable Care Act is something we need to do right now just to make sure that every single American has access to health care.
Very
and
good.
can afford it.
And can afford it. And Siri, that's what I want you to talk about too. For me, you know, of course, it says the Affordable Care Act, the affordable part. It seems like even if this act stays, we are somehow losing that affordable part out of it. And we've seen it happen this year, and it may get worse next year. You know, do you see this act stay in place?
Well, so here's what I see. I see politics being injected in every single time we have political debates. And I'll give you an example. I've asked people, you know, what do you think about Obamacare? And they'll say, I hate Obamacare. What do you think about the Affordable Care Act? Well, maybe it's more affordable. What do you think about people with pre-existing conditions being able to stay on their insurance? And they say, absolutely, we definitely need that. So what that tells me is it's about the politics, not about the policy. And over the last 10 years, we've had these discussions again and again about repealing Obamacare. Now they're taking out the individual mandate. Governors don't expand Medicaid because they're trying to inject politics into a discussion about people's health. What I say is that there should be a principle here. The principle of universal health care should be something we should all agree to, both because it's practical, it brings down the cost of health care, as well as it's ethical and moral not to let somebody get sick or die because they grew up in the wrong zip code. And here's a big policy difference between me and my opponent on this. I have looked at healthcare systems around the world, and the cheapest way, the way to bring down the cost of healthcare the most is by having a single-payer system. And you can take a look at other countries, and there are many different systems there. In the UK, most of the medical services provided by government doctors, but in Canada, there's a single-payer system which brings down the cost of healthcare, but there's private doctors all over Canada, and so you can still get good standard of care, but you bring down the cost, and doctors can focus on practicing medicine instead of practicing administration.
They're businessmen mostly. I'm sorry.
Well, no.
We have so many of them in our community, and when we sit down at dinner time, they're never talking about how to heal somebody. They're always talking about where they're going to open their next office.
Well, I will say this, and not only in their defense, but healthcare is really complicated. Okay, and so, we don't agree on this part of it because one thing no one talks about in terms of healthcare is where's the money going to come from. So we spend about $3.2 trillion in healthcare right now. And you have to find the $2 trillion of the public sector, of the private sector rather, we have to find out where that money is going to go. And the way that we do that, honestly, is by expanding Medicaid, obviously, making sure that we have a national insurance exchange. So right now, insurance companies are only competing in Texas. And that's why the fees are so high and the rates are so high. If we expand it nationally and make everyone compete, we can drive those costs down. And the third piece is that we need to create a public option so that people that, you know, that can't really afford a private premium can really have access to it. You know, the cost of it is what's important.
Okay.
So yes, other countries do it.
You think the single payer system is too costly?
I think the single payer is definitely what we should do. Okay. But my opponent mentioned that other countries do it. Yes, that's true. But World War II also wiped out the whole infrastructure of it, and they were able to bring that back together and really build it the way that they wanted to. Healthcare cannot be something that we just figure out. We can't. The plan that my opponent supports is increasing taxes, personal taxes, payroll taxes, taking money out of retirement, out of pensions. I mean, to pay for, and there's about a $1 trillion deficit in where that money's going to come from. We have to find how we're going to pay for it. So until we can find out what that is, we need to improve what we have. Because right now, Obamacare is not what he initially wanted it to be, right? It's a watered down version that the Republicans, right? If we can bring back to what he originally wanted it to be, do that now, definitely move towards single payer universal health care. That's where we need to be. I completely agree.
Sure, I definitely need to respond to that. So this issue about where is it going to come from, and this is a talking point the Republicans make all the time, that you don't get anything for free. Well, I'll give you an example. If you look at if you look at the British healthcare system, for example, right? The NHS, if you just took that exact system and you scaled it up for the population of the United States, you could cover every man, woman, and child in America for less than the cost of the VA, Medicaid, and Medicare right now. I mean, the fact is, it's just more cost effective. There's some complicated math to healthcare, but there's a very simple proposition that if everybody isn't in the system, it is going to cost more. That is why in the United States, sometimes you can pay twice as much for a procedure, exact same procedure, as in Canada or in Europe. And it doesn't make any sense for us. And the fact that we're not able to negotiate drug prices doesn't make any sense for the individual. You can still have a high standard of care. So I mean, there's some of these myths about what a single payer system is. But the truth is, if there was a cheaper way to do it, if there was a more effective way to do it, please show it to me. I've looked at healthcare systems all over the world, and a single payer system makes the most sense. And we don't need another 8 years of debate about this.
But once again, this is going to be a debate between the two of us. Because the money, yes, the money is there. But the middle class, cannot continue to brunt all the expenses, right? And so in the bill that he is specifically speaking about, it clearly states all of the increases in taxes that have to happen to pay for that bill. And in addition to that, you're eliminating any private entity cannot manage or have an office anymore. It will be fully government funded.
No, I don't think that's how the Canada model is not that way.
No, but that's how this specific bill, HR, this is how it's written. And so we need to go back at that, and we need to break it down and really see what those things
needs
are.
to be done.
Has to be done,
that's all I know is something needs to be done. We talk about Canada and of course UK and the Europe and everything. I tell you, we go back to India and to Pakistan. I take some medications that I pay for in this country, even maybe with my insurance, I paid like 20 times more than what I pay in Pakistan. And I'm like, why?
Well, the pharmaceutical companies lobby. So he said we need to eliminate that. Medicare and Medicaid need to negotiate with them directly. There cannot be a middleman in that. And we have to but those small changes though would drive those prices down. In addition to that, if pharmaceutical companies, if generic medications could come out faster, then we wouldn't have to pay those high fees. But that's how those pharmaceutical companies make their money. Exactly, but that's all money. So we have to try to pull it out of the system right now.
I'll let you, the last comment on healthcare.
Well, I mean, it is a very important subject. It is complicated, but I've heard this at other forums before, and I just need to clarify for the audience, because the idea that this is going to eliminate private medicine or private doctors is not correct at all. What we're talking about is taking the insurance part out, taking away the administrative responsibilities and letting doctors practice medicine. And in terms of raising taxes to pay for something, what you're talking about is actually providing health care for the entire society. We have this antiquated model that started during World War II where employers could not offer extra compensation to their employees, and so they could only compensate them with health insurance. that doesn't apply anywhere else in the world, and it doesn't really make any sense. So if you take that burden away from small businesses,
Yes.
having to worry about the health care of their employees, that actually frees them up, and it encourages them to be more entrepreneurial. At the same time, you brought down the cost for everyone.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, because we can
We'll
go,
leave
we
it
can
at
go
that.
back and
I
forth.
don't think we can solve
We're
it
not going to win
today.
this debate.
I want you all to, another subject that's close to me also is gun laws, and we've seen that in the last couple of months. The violence, the tragedy in Florida, and all that. Living in Texas, it's a subject that's very dear to some people over here. They love their guns, and I don't mind that. Everybody has a right to bear arms, own their gun and everything. But then again, the whole debate about people being able to own automatic weapons that have no use other than killing another human being. Do you support gun laws, ban automatic weapons?
Most definitely. I mean, I've got 3 boys. One in one college, high school, middle school. Like I worry when everything was happening, they were so scared to go to school. And so, from a real life perspective, there's no reason anyone needs to have an assault weapon. I mean, I grew up around guns. I don't want to take anyone's guns from them, but we have to do universal background checks to make sure when people sell guns one-on-one, there should be some record of it to make sure that we know who's hands
Wasn't
they're
it
in.
funny? That kind of reminds me. I don't know, Siri, if you saw that too. This is actually maybe just a week or 2 after the tragedy where a passenger had a cat or something or a dog in a plane's cabin, and they died or got suffocated or were unconscious, that pet. And there was legislation proposed in the next week on the House floor that the airlines will not allow for pets to be carried a certain way. I'm not being very exact. And I thought that was, not that we shouldn't do that for pets, that's fine. But here's thousands and thousands of people, children getting killed.
Yes.
Nobody wants to talk about it, but one pet, and now we are legislating for them. If there's a double standard, tell me about it.
It's all about money.
Well, so I'll say 2 things. One, I think it is important to have experience with this process because the process is convoluted. We don't actually pass a lot of laws. It's a dirty secret. And so sometimes you get policies changed by understanding the way that Congress works. You understand the way to work with federal agencies like I did when I was in the U.S. Senate. And I got a policy changed, a medical policy changed after 46 years of trying with the DEA. But there's also the politics of it, shaping the narrative. And so what has happened every single time that there's been a mass shooting is that people say, you're going to have your guns taken away. There were ads the very next day. What did we do in our campaign? We actually had an event, Pearland for Parkland, right after the Parkland mass shooting, to show that we won't stand for this any longer. And at all of the town halls for our lives, when these students are organizing, they're not just outraged, but they are organized. That is the big difference, because after each one of these mass shootings, lots of people are outraged, but they don't get anything done. Now the students are getting organized. They've actually gotten financial divestment from some of these companies, and we are standing behind them. That's why we got 114 youth volunteers to join our campaign after the town halls for our lives, because really that's where the energy and the passion is. And people have been telling these students, you're too immature to talk about your own life or your own safety.
No,
well, if they're,
I mean, they're old enough to go fight for us and get killed.
Exactly. Yeah, they're engaged.
They can't legislate. They can't talk about these issues. They can't protest about these issues. That's so insane.
But
and now we have Oliver North.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think I honestly,
the man who made a living selling guns.
Yeah. But our young people are engaged now. We're actually created a legislating writing class. So I have middle schoolers now writing legislation to change the issues, specific issues that they're passionate about. Legislation is not hard to do. Passing legislation is not hard to do. They make it seem difficult for us. I mean, I wrote legislation and got it passed the House in the state of Texas. You have to be passionate about something, and you have to know how to do it, and you have to have people around you that will support you. And once that secret gets out, we're really going to be able to reshape America.
Well, inshallah, that's
Inshallah,
how we put
that's
it.
right.
I have a little bit of time left. I'd like, before we, close out our program today, for you both to make a final, appeal to our community as to why they should come out and vote for you. And I know it's from the 14th to the 18th of May. The election is on the 22nd, and I've been telling them they all need to come and vote. I think they're getting energized, they're beginning to learn, but we need to keep reminding them again and again. Do you want to go first, Siri?
Sure. So the election is coming up starting next Monday, May 14th. It's not on the weekend. It goes Monday through Friday, and the last day to vote is May 22nd. And I think all of your viewers out there should go out and vote, because we are at a critical point in our nation's history right now. The direction that we go decides who we are as a country. What is our character? When we see things like people being discriminated against based on their race or their gender or their faith or their country of origin, we all have a choice. Do we stay silent, or do we speak out? Do we take action? My action was to resign from my career and come back home to stand up for the things I believe in. If you believe in a country where everyone is treated equally, then I ask you to come out and vote next Monday, May 14th, and express your voice.
Thank you, Siri. Dr. Plummer.
We're at a tipping point in America right now. We're at a point to where we have full control of what our future looks like. I come from the private sector, the public sector. I've got young children. I'm of Indian, Arab descent, and I'm African American female. All of the issues that scream discrimination. So I want to fight for every single person. And what I want our viewers to know more than anything else is we're 10,000 Muslims in this district, and we don't vote at even 3%.
Yeah.
If we understand the power that is in our hands right now and the amount of change that we can to fight Islamophobia, to fight discrimination, to make sure that our families can come and join us in this country, that our children can go to school safely and get the education that they need. If we want those things, if we want health care that is affordable and accessible to every single person, it is in your hands. The power to go out and vote.
Yes.
We have died.
Yes.
We have died for the right to vote.
Well,
let's use that right now. Use our voice and get out to vote.
Yeah.
May 14th. Let's do it before Ramadan starts.
Yeah.
Let's
And the first week of Ramadan.
Yes, the first week of Ramadan.
Thank you both so much for
Thank
being
you.
with us today, taking time out. I appreciate it. I'm sure our community appreciates it. आप देख रहे हैं हमारा प्रोग्राम दी कम्युनिटी आवर. उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि आपने हमारा आज का प्रोग्राम एंजॉय किया होगा. दोनों कैंडिडेट्स जो हैं वो अपना अपना मौक़िफ़ आपके सामने उन्होंने रखा. इट इज़ इन योर हैंड्स. आप डिसाइड कीजिए कि आप कैसे समझते हैं कि कौन आपके वोट का हकदार है. लेकिन जिसको भी आप वोट देना चाहें, जाइए ज़रूर, वोट ज़रूर दीजिए, कि उसके जब तक आप वोट नहीं देंगे हम एज ए कम्युनिटी आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते. उम्मीद कर रहे हैं अगले हफ्ते आप फिर हमारा प्रोग्राम देखेंगे. तब तक के लिए मुझे इजाज़त दीजिए. मैं हूँ आपका होस्ट सजाद बरकी. खुदा हाफिज़.